John Ruggiero, and welcome to this episode of New Jersey Paranormal. With me again is my partner, Chris, and New Jersey medium and psychic detective, Frank St. James. Frank, thanks for being here today. Again, we've done the gambit as far as interviews of people in the field, and I have been interested in someone like you for a very long time, psychic detective. I researched, I tried to find someone who had experience and was really legit, not just someone who put it on their Facebook page or web page. And I've got nothing but great feedback about you, validation from people about you that you're the real deal. Let's start with how you became involved with the police as a psychic detective. How did that all start for you?
Well, I have to go back to when I was a kid. I was going on 4. My mother was putting laundry up on the line. That's what they did in those days. And I was playing in the sandbox, and all of a sudden, I got this vision of my grandfather, my mother's father, and I saw him holding his heart and falling. And I ran over to my mother, and who's a bit psychic. I found out later she just didn't want to use it. Okay. She told me to go back in the sandbox. By the time I got by the sandbox, he was standing there in spirit. And he was a musician. He was on the radio in 1930. Yeah, my mother used to sing. And they came in 15 out of a couple thousand of them. Rudy Valley and the Nelson family, and everybody was on the radio. And anyway, he came through, and all I wanted to do was play music, which I did for 50 years. But my next vision was I was in the Navy. It happened almost 1961, and I got stuck on the ship. I was on a tin can, and it was still moving once in a while. Was from the Second World War, so okay. They were just changing over. But I was up in a small room. They call it a rope room. There was a little red light, so it was enough that I could practice my guitar and read the music. And in the dark corner, all of a sudden, this light come out and went through me. And once it went through me, I started to cold sweat. And then it came out, and then went back into the corner again, and about the face of my other grandfather, my father's father.
Oh, wow.
And he was, now you don't get, voices,
right.
Like we're talking, but you get a silent voice. And bottom line is, he said my father was going to die in 10 years. And I had gotten a letter from my mother that day, and I thought it was my grandmother that died, his wife. But then I called my mother up. I got permission to call him. And no, she said, your grandfather. And
so this is an ability, again, that developed through the years.
Yeah, it was there because my mother said I almost died twice as a baby.
Oh, wow.
So
so you think that's
colleagues of mine had a problem as a baby.
Okay.
So something opened up. That particular, really, they were good psychics. It's odd to have both. It's not everybody is a psychic and a medium.
Right. So where did the involvement with the police come in?
So later on, around when I was playing music, I met this detective, and he was just retiring. He did the Boston Strangler case and other cases. He was, and a Scorpio, and they never stop. They will never stop.
No, they don't.
Even after they retire, they will still be going after people that weren't brought to justice. Anyway, we got to be friends, and he had me go in a room, and I was in there for 5 minutes. I'd come out, and I had to write down 60 things I saw in the room. So he started teaching me a method, and then we went on some cases. So I was like training all the time, and I learned to compartmentalize things that were important with the case.
Right.
I learned how to do remote viewing when I wanted to, and
And that means if you weren't physically at the location,
Right.
you could still see
yeah.
the site of the murder.
You know, once in a while you read something out of a book, and there might be one paragraph out of the whole book that's really interesting. The rest is blah blah blah.
How did that discussion start that created that connection with a detective to lead you down that road to
I was
do that?
playing in the lounge, and he had come in, and up in Boston, either the Irish Mafia owns most of the restaurants or the Italian. So
How did
and-
it, but that discussion between the two of you, that he found out that you had an ability
Well,
that he could hone?
what happened was he was in the lounge, and all of a sudden somebody said, "Oh, Daniel is here," you know, like from Hawaii, 5-0, and everybody at the bar went like that because they were selling drugs too. Every place sold drugs almost. So I started talking to him. He said, like my music, and I started talking to him. I told him certain things that I was interested in, and so we started doing cases. And then I had to put together information enough that made sense, and not just, you know, at the time there was a lot of people just calling up and
Yeah.
saying
Giving
blah, blah,
tips
blah.
and, yeah, I see
you know,
this,
and,
I saw
okay, go
that
back to
person.
sleep, lady.
Yeah.
So actual critical information that actually could be a
Right.
lead to
Yeah.
further.
So methodically, I started going. I learned. I actually learned everything from gifted ladies up there, and they all had a certain thing going for them, and there were some really good readers, I have to say, you know, and they taught me a lot, and so I am a hypnotherapist, and so over the years, 10 years, I took different courses and went to seminars, and and I developed with a friend of mine I met. He was captain of the state police in Rhode Island, and he was interested. He had this whole process of hypnotizing me.
Yeah, let's talk about that because we have a bunch of points here that I want
Okay.
to, and that's definitely one of them.
Yeah.
So let's get into that one first.
All right.
When we discussed this on the phone, you were describing this
Yeah.
to me. Describe that process again, where they would hypnotize you, and what would you see, and how would that whole thing
Well,
work?
first I had to go into mentally a cleansing process and a protection. And I always went to the Archangel Michael for protection. And he would be waiting outside for me, and he'd go along with me. And what the process was the person that was murdered or they found dead was allowed to step into me spiritually, and I would step aside, and then they would interrogate that person.
Wow.
And at some point, this was an actual case. Her first name was Diana. I don't know her last name, but
Right.
I'm not going to be mentioning people.
Right.
You know, but they found her on the beach, and her hands were tied, and she didn't have any water in her, so she was killed before that tortured.
Wow.
Unfortunately, they used to have those photograph where you bring your stuff into a booth.
Right.
And anyway, she was holding on to some drugs, and she sold some of it, so she was beaten to death.
Oh my God.
And then putting on the thing. Well, anyway, Diana.
So, but the victim came through you and
Oh yeah.
told
So
all
the
of this.
the victim actually came through me. It's kind of a little weird feeling.
I can imagine.
Because I've done that to a couple other detectives, and they said, "To hell with that. I'm out of here. Wake
I mean,
me
it's
up."
like channeling, right? I mean, that's what we're talking about.
And so at a certain point, the detective would say, "You're going to open your eyes, but you're still, but the murderer is sitting in front of you, but he can't see you.
Wow.
And you remember what he looks like and everything. So that happened. So I could see that, whatever happened. So that at the end of the session, I'm a psychic artist too. I could draw the faces, and so but at that time we were in the precinct, so we just put the captions together and got the face out of it.
Wow.
And then I had a weird feeling. I said, this person is going to be found in Narragansett Bay. I see an anchor, like a tattoo on his arm. Anyway, about 2 weeks later, some fishermen were using a net, and they dragged this guy up. And I had described that it looked like his scalp was pulled back.
Right.
And he didn't have an anchor on his arm, but it showed like they tied an anchor to him and threw him in the bay. Or they put him in the wheelbarrow. That was the other thing. They cut off the hands and the feet and the head sometimes.
So when they said that you're going to see the killer or the murderer, are you seeing it through the victim's eyes? Is that why you can see?
The victim's eyes.
He's channeling the. You had mentioned a story too about a boy that you said had come to you. And this is said, you described this to me as like one of the first, or one that you remember that actually you could see and communicate with.
The most tragic things, I do cases with pedophiles, kids missing.
Yeah.
And there was one that was missing for about almost 7 years. He was 6.5. And he went missing, and they went into all these houses in the community. This is Rhode Island. And the only house they didn't go into was a friend of one of the police officers. And eventually, well, there's a whole story here, but one day I was up I used to live in Canton, Massachusetts. I had all the windows up because it was a nice warm day. And I looked, and I had a piece of paper down, and I said, "Jason, show me where you are." And with that, the windows came down, the door was slamming.
Oh, my God.
And that's the way I'm going to open up my book.
That's a good
and
way.
then gradually work that case through it. But the next door neighbor was a kid at the time of 14, and he had raped and beat this kid to death.
God.
There was still blood in the kitchen in his house.
So with the window
It's
shut,
almost like that Hannibal Lecter movie
later
on, where the detective's looking out there, and she got this weird feeling, and then she's knocking on the door, and the guy's has a woman in a well.
So when the window shut and the breeze
door
came
was
through,
slamming, and
did he appear to you at that point, or did he appear to you, the boy?
No, he didn't appear to me.
Okay.
They don't always do that. I could walk around at certain times and see people walking, just doing normal stuff. Ghosts, spirits. I don't believe a spirit dies either. As I know you had John Machatis on here, and I was in his book, but I don't believe they die. They get rid of what caused it. A normal person, like cancer or something like that, they don't bring it with them.
Okay.
So it's not organic. They don't bring the organic side. So it takes a little bit for them sometimes to adjust and not feel that they're going to go through some pain or something.
Right.
And they're very good around their people. Going back a bit, 1970, my father passed, and he was only 50, but he used to work. He worked hard. He had 2 or 3 jobs. We all worked in the family. It was very close, but he passed away, and I was sitting in back of my desk. This is in Jersey. And I closed my eyes, and all of a sudden I saw his face. It was bright red with black around it. And silently he said, I'm a Pisces. This was January. And so he said I was going to die on my birthday. And I had this life as an entertainer, believe me. It was full.
So tell us about the John said that when you guys had the conversation, you were talking a lot about Palisades Park. Why is that such a...
That was a good
So
one.
I was working with a detectives up there, and what happened was this young couple, boyfriend, girlfriend, and they were getting drugs, and one morning he woke up, but she didn't. And then he rolled her up in the carpet, something anyway. And then he he went over the Palisades. Now, it goes up to 400 feet. I mean, this is no, people commit suicide over
Yeah,
there.
you were telling me that, like they could tell
Yeah.
if it was a murder or suicide by
Yeah.
how far the body was from the cliff.
So anyway, he dumped her off the cliff. We were at the precinct. There was a couple people, a forest ranger, this and that, and they couldn't find a body, so they did infrared from the helicopter. Usually they can, pick up that energy. So nobody believed me. A year later, they found the body. It was stuck in a crevice.
Oh my God. Was
But-
this one of the, you mentioned the auto writing. Do you do that a lot? Is that something that's,
Yeah, I do it a lot. And
for these cases, do you find yourself either looking at a picture or
Yeah.
going to a site and then you start writing? Like, what's the process usually?
once
that
in a
first-
while, when I feel I could see a picture of somebody,
Right.
and then I start to get visions of what happened to them and stuff. So then I'll write down Mary Lou.
Right.
My name is Frank St. James. Can we talk? Now, Mary Lou was brutalized.
Right.
So it might take a few times before she has confidence that I'm not going to hurt her.
Yep.
And then I put a question mark on it. And if it's a yes, sometimes there's a lot of scribbling going on. Sometimes it's written backwards.
Okay.
So I got to use a mirror to get the information.
Okay.
Well, speaking of the picture too, we're going to show a picture.
Oh.
You had shown me before we started filming. It was a shadow figure, no other way to describe it. What looked like in somebody's living room.
Yeah.
And somebody that asked you to get involved in a case.
Well, it was,
You were telling me about that.
It was up in Maine. I did so much work up there.
Right.
With,
So somebody asked you to get involved.
She called me. She saw me on one of the programs that I was on, and she sent me some pictures of her and that she was missing. She couldn't, and she suspected this pimp of killing her. There used to be somehow there was these girls coming from Canada
Right.
down into America. They were looking to be models
Yeah.
and different stuff, and then these people would collect them
Yeah, these predators.
and
Traffickers.
turn them
Right.
into,
Yeah.
promise them that maybe 6 months they'll leave them alone.
Right.
Well, anyway, so she contacted me. I did remote viewing and stuff, and she got angry. She's a tall girl, and finally she had enough of it, and she got angry with the pimp, and they had a fight, and he killed her, and then he put her in the bathtub and started carving up her body. So he was taking out pieces and dropping them up on the river or this, and I saw a really good spot where there was enough body that that was left,
To identify
and
her?
it was near a dump up there. And
Now, how's this information received from like the person requesting it from you? When you have to tell them something gory like
well,
that.
sometimes I just hook on to the person, the
Right.
spirit,
Okay.
and I'm not even talking to them, but or I'll say, "Show me where you are,"
Right.
you know.
And you'll just see a vision of a.
I had an answer like I'm all over, you know.
Fear, I'm over here.
Yeah,
But you
but
see a
these-
vision of a place, right?
Right.
Like a place in the woods or like a building, something that identifies.
Yeah, when I found people in the woods, I found people in.
Because you mentioned a
near
little
dumps.
blonde-haired girl. That was another story that
Oh,
we
that was
talked
another
about.
one. That
And-
a friend of mine. This is 10 years after this girl disappeared.
Right.
And a friend of mine who is really good also, and she called me up from Florida, and she said they had found this guy that killed about 20 girls. I mean, sometimes they get them at bus stops and everything. They just abduct them. And anyway, she was walking on the side of a road, and he picked her up somehow. And she was actually never found, but
Wow.
I found the area where she was. He took her to Vermont, near a camp for kids, and he buried her up there. She showed me. I connected with her spirit, and she showed me this old church that was abandoned, and she showed me this side of it, the right side of it, and I saw her. It was on a hill, and you look down, and there was a lake out there. There's thousands of lakes all over the place, but it was a girls' camp, and he had buried her there. But it was one of the victims that he decided to take with him to the grave. But I did hundreds of these.
I know. We touched on a bunch of them. Again, these are the ones that I remember. You had mentioned a suicide victim as well. Jumped off a bridge, and they couldn't find the body.
I joined a private detective agency down in Rhode Island, and the woman that ran it was Emma. She was like 4'11", and I always used to ask her why she walked like that, and she said, "Well, I find change."
Oh my God. Okay.
Thanks. Well, anyway, she got a call from the police department. There was an alert for this woman. They found her car by the river,
Okay.
by a bridge, and she was one of those manic depressant, like a lot of people have, And apparently she walked into the river and drowned herself. And I saw where her body was. They were in the wrong spot. They had to go over a mile down the river, and it was stuck under branches. And they found her. But
Now, after something like that happens, this is what makes me curious. After they locate the body, and again, maybe I watched too many movies or whatever, but do you ever get the feeling of closure, like that they've crossed over, that they've moved on, they're at peace now?
Quite a few of them.
Yeah.
Quite a few of them, because they wanted to tell their family what happened.
Right,
I mean,
right.
it was important for the family. And,
Do you ever give the family that? Do you ever contact the family and say, "Hey, look,
yeah, sure.
they've
I've been
come to me
involved
and
with the
said
family.
they're at peace now"?
We had, I had a private reading come to my house, and then she said, my sister was, I want to find out what happened to my sister, and they can't find her. She has a 5-year-old son. She lived with her family, very nice family. A friend of mine, a detective, I told her what I saw, that she was, that this so-called friend, a boyfriend, gave her an overdose, and she was still breathing, but instead of taking to the hospital, which is a lot of them don't do that, they'll take them to a neighborhood, and hopefully somebody will walk by and see them struggling. Well, anyway, he hit her body down near Staten Island. I forget, there's 2 bridges going across,
Right.
because I drew the whole scene.
Wow.
And so I went around with this detective, and all the visions I had, and we started connecting them up. And even the house where they had the party, this guy used to have parties there all the time. And then we went down across on the other side. I think we were on Staten Island side, but there was all kind of those big high reeds and everything. And I saw the sign that said 15 miles an hour in my vision,
Right.
but it was on the other side of where she was, of the river. And I'm walking down this path, and then I got a vision that they were sending up a helicopter. I said, they'll find her in 15 minutes.
Wow.
And the car, because it was you could be in 25 feet of it and not see the car. That's the way
Right.
they try to hit. And 15 minutes later, we got a call, and they found the car and the body, her body in it.
Oh my God.
It took a while to get him, guilty.
Right, convicted.
One of the detectives who's in Sayreville, that I keep in contact with a few of them, he was investigating some other case, and he found this necklace with her name on it.
Wow.
And then he went and revisited the boyfriend, him and another detective. And as they're walking away, he says, "Oh, I didn't love her."
Did you point him in the direction of the boyfriend?
No. He went.
No, but I
on-
mean their initial interest.
Yeah.
Did you help?
Yeah,
with
initially we found her body and
Okay.
everything, but they managed to give him 5 years in prison. But they were, I mean, it's a terrible thing. But this, almost every family's been going through the drug stuff.
Wow.
And it's just,
Again, unfortunately, our show is only a half hour.
Oh.
And you've got, like, when we talked on the phone, we went for much longer than a half hour. And I tried to narrow things down to bullet points that I thought would best represent you and what you do. But all of the experiences that you've had, all the things that you've done, the auto writing, the channeling, I mean, you should really write a book. I don't know.
color therapy, the chakras in your body. Colors come through sometimes.
And that tells you about people and
You know,
who they are. And
you really can't lie to me.
well, we should
Oh,
end this
really?
segment right now then.
Really look at And
Especially not in writing.
but I want to make it. So, are you still kind of actively
I'm
helping
active.
people? Because
I'm
I want to
active
give
on the
people
phone.
your
Sure.
website and your information.
I don't have a website because I was really attacked on my on my site, and I lost thousands of dollars worth of. I'm an astrologer. I do forensic astrology too.
But I want to direct if people want to contact you, and if they need assistance with something or a haunting
Just
or
a reading,
a loved
or
one,
just a
how
reading.
would they best do that?
862-684-1904.
Okay.
And I do readings on the phone, and I perfected a way of doing that so it blocks out everything. So I pick up people that have loved ones that have passed, and I could give them a message for them.
Okay. Well,
too.
again, Frank gave you the phone number. Frank, thank you so much. We could have gone for 3 segments easy, but thank you for
thank you.
coming. It was great speaking with you. You're fascinating, and I do think you should write a book. So thank you all for watching this episode of New Jersey Paranormal. We'll see you next time.